entitled Advancing Strategic Partnerships for Maritime Security. My name is Alina Carlos, and I'm a program manager for Strat-based ADR Institute, and I will be your host for this afternoon. It is indeed an honor to have you all with us today, as this will be the last Defense Roundtable discussion that we will be holding at the Institute. This afternoon's discussion is in partnership with the Embassy of Australia in the Philippines. The Philippines continues to face illegal and aggressive challenges in its maritime territory, such as the use of water cannons, destruction of the marine environment, and collision incidents with foreign vessels. These destabilizing acts goes against international law and violate the Philippines' arbitral victory in the West Philippine Sea. In response to this, various strategies exist, such as the Philippines' newly launched National Security Policy 2023 to 2028, which envisions a peaceful maritime and archipelagic nation with several key government agencies, such as the Philippine Coast Guard, playing a critical role in achieving this goal. Furthermore, help from neighboring states such as Australia can improve the Philippines' external defense capabilities. With 77 years of bilateral relations, a diplomatic milestone was achieved when the Philippines and Australia elevated their ties to a strategic partnership. The visit of Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese to Manila last September 2023 is a landmark initiative highlighting the Philippines' central geopolitical value in the Indo-Pacific region and flourishing ties between our two countries. Defense ties are also critical to Philippine-Australia relations. With existing maritime issues, the Philippines and Australia build on opportunities to cooperate. In August 2023, the Philippines and Australia conducted joint military exercises called Exercise Alon as part of Canberra's Indo-Pacific Endeavour 2023. And now we have the ongoing maritime cooperative activity in the West Philippine Sea. Both continuously strengthen their strategic partnership to safeguard maritime security, driven by their mutual commitment to maintaining stability, freedom of navigation, and preserving their marine resources. Such cooperation enhances their security and promotes a rules-based international order that benefits the broader global community. And to open this afternoon's discussion, may I call on Dr. Moya Colette, Deputy Head of Mission of the Australian Embassy in the Philippines. Please give her a warm round of applause.
Thank you. Magandang hapon. It is my pleasure to be here today to address such a distinguished audience. Australia is a proud sponsor of this event, and I thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here. Today is a vital opportunity to reflect on the flourishing maritime cooperation between Australia and the Philippines, which continues to go from strength to strength. But it is also an opportunity to consider how we work together in the future. Our two countries have worked hard to deepen our engagement, and this has been one of our most productive years. We have had two visits to the Philippines from our Deputy Prime Minister and Defence Minister, visits from our Foreign Affairs and Trade Ministers, our Chief of Defence Force, and the Special Envoy for Southeast Asia. And we were honoured to welcome Foreign Secretary Manalo and Trade and Industry Secretary Pascual to Adelaide in October for the 6th Philippines-Australia Ministerial Meeting. And the centrepiece of our engagement came in September with the landmark visit to Manila by Australia's Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, where he and your President Marcos agreed to formally elevate our bilateral relationship to a strategic partnership. This was a historic moment, setting the direction for cooperation across a range of areas. A key focus of the strategic partnership is our maritime cooperation, a priority for both our governments. Australia, like the Philippines, is a maritime nation. We depend on a region governed by accepted rules and norms, where all countries can cooperate, trade, and thrive. This includes ships and aircraft being able to take goods to market unimpeded. The South China Sea is a vital waterway for the entire international community. We want to see a peaceful South China Sea where international law is respected and waterways are open for trade. The UN Convention on the Law of the Sea provides the comprehensive legal framework for all activities in the oceans and seas. Adherence to UNCLOS is vital for the region. Maritime claims, wherever they are, must be consistent with UNCLOS. And so it remains as important as ever that the parties abide by the 2016 South China Sea Arbitral Tribunal Award. Like the Philippines, Australia will continue to call for adherence to UNCLOS because it provides the foundation for peace, security, and stability in the maritime domain. And we will continue our cooperation. By working together, we create greater strategic certainty and build a solid foundation for security and prosperity. Just yesterday, our two armed forces concluded a maritime cooperative activity in the West Philippine Sea, a key commitment made by leaders when they announced our strategic partnership. Australia is also proud of the close relationship we have with Admiral Gavan, who is here today, and the dedicated and professional officers of the Philippine Coast Guard. The PCG plays an important role in supporting maritime security and protecting the marine environment. We are enormously pleased to see Admiral Gavan and Australian alumni in such an important position at such a consequential time for our region. Under his strong leadership, our relationship and cooperation with the PCG continues to expand. This has allowed us to share our skills and experience through the provision of training, equipment, and technical support. We are also working closely with other Philippine maritime agencies to build resilience to key challenges, including illegal fishing and other transnational crimes. Australia's cooperation with the Philippines on the marine environment continues to grow. Earlier this month, Australia co-sponsored an important regional workshop on the High Seas Biodiversity Treaty, known as the BBNJ, with the Philippine Department of Foreign Affairs, the UK Embassy in Manila, and the High Seas Alliance. This landmark treaty will play a crucial role in protecting the oceans that lie beyond our national jurisdictions. We also welcomed Australia's National Science Agency, the CSIRO, to the Philippines this month to work with the Philippine Department of Environment and Natural Resources to measure how much plastic exists in Philippine waters, a significant environmental challenge for all of us. Through this work, we are cooperating to develop policies to reduce plastics litter, work that I am particularly proud of. We are also supporting Philippine efforts to monitor, protect, and restore key marine resources and biodiversity, including coral reefs. I could go on, but our areas of marine and maritime cooperation with the Philippines are too numerous to mention in this short speech. Suffice to say that our level of maritime engagement is truly unprecedented and continues to grow. I am excited about the opportunities this presents for our two nations to work even closer together to make a positive impact on our region. Maraming salamat and mabuhay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Colette. So this afternoon session will highlight the strategic policy directions of the Philippine Coast Guard in contributing to the country's maritime security. It aims to generate meaningful engagements among various agencies that work on protecting the national sovereignty in the West Philippine Sea. So today we have three distinguished speakers who play critical roles in the Philippines' maritime security. And for this moment, we are honored to have with us today the newly installed Commandant of the Philippine Coast Guard to discuss the role of the Philippine Coast Guard in safeguarding the Philippines' civil maritime security. Please give a hand for Coast Guard Admiral Ronnie Hill Gavan.
To Dr. Moya Colette, I think I have to mention you first because you have already divulged that I am your product. So, good afternoon, ma'am. Professor Manhit, you can only be seen by me on TV. I'm really so honored to see you here in person today. My fellow workers in government, partners from the diplomatic service, friends from the media, my colleagues in the Coast Guard, from the Navy, the Armed Forces, the police, everyone, good afternoon. I am actually in Canberra when I came here today because I was informed that I will be focused more on our Australian engagement, but I was informed that I should be talking about the grander things in life. And I think it is more fitting for this kind of activity where the best and the brightest of the country is convened to find sense on how best we can move forward as a country in promoting that most desired peace and stability through our role as the lead in the civil maritime security initiatives of this country. I will be very brief in my message. I hope to receive questions after if there's some time so we can be more engaging, we can be more precise on the way the Coast Guard really intends to move forward under my leadership. And what the Coast Guard really wants to do in the West Philippine Sea. It has been very, very clear. The President has been very vocal that our mission is peace through peaceful and rules-based approach. And how the Coast Guard intends to do this, it has not changed. Since the Coast Guard was tasked to prosecute civil maritime security programs in the West Philippine Sea or the broader South China Sea, we've been pursuing three things. Number one is through maritime domain awareness and response, including maritime law enforcement. And number two, coastal state administration to advance the country's grip through governance of the areas we control or claim. And number three, which is very, very important for this undertaking, is through international cooperation and engagement. And where does strategic engagement come in? On the first line of effort, which is maritime domain awareness and response, including maritime law enforcement, one thing is very vital for the Coast Guard: capacity building. If we are to enforce the law, foremost, we must be very knowledgeable, if not an authority, in the prosecution of international law, including the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, the other International Maritime Convention, and more specifically, the arbitral award. To this, we expect our partners to help us through, and Australia has indeed came forward at the right time. Myself is a product of that engagement. On coastal state administration, we intend to give more focus on our footprints on the ground. We work with our partners and allies and our partners in the Philippine government to establish our stations and other facilities to prosecute, to effect Philippine laws. We've been succeeding on that so far, and it is the reason why we have been very active in supporting the armed forces in their rotation and resupply mission because of that second track. And number three, in our effort to promote international maritime cooperation and engagement, we've been actively working not only with our friends, partners, and allies, but also with the ASEAN member states. Through this, we've been working for a more ASEAN-centric approach. The Philippine Coast Guard has been one of the pillars in the establishment of the ASEAN Coast Guard Forum to discuss things like this, to be open, to welcome people from the academe, people from the government, to pour in what they think should be the best way forward for us to move as one people. We are also actively engaged in the maritime law enforcement dialogue with the United Nations Office for Drugs and Crime, so we can reach out further with our partners, with ASEAN and beyond. We are also actively engaged in the Humanitarian Dialogue Initiative, which includes our biggest competitor, also with our partners in ASEAN. We are all over in every facets, in every fora, where we can advance our thoughts as a peace-loving and rule-abiding people. That is how we intend to proceed as the Coast Guard of this country. We will pursuing our being a peace-loving people. We will be pursuing our being a law-abiding people to the three key lines of effort, which we wish our friends, partners, and allies, and even our neighbors should be engaging with us. As they say, for the Coast Guard, the law is our way of life. And in this fight, we say that peace based on rules will remain and should always be the case for the Philippine Coast Guard. Thank you very much.
Sir, may we request a photo opportunity with Dr. Moya and Mr. Manhit?
What will we do? I will be
Thank you so much, Admiral Gaban. We'll move now to our next speaker. All right, so as per the request of Admiral Gavan, he's open to answer 3 questions from our audience. If there's anyone who would like to ask question now, is your chance, or else I take my opportunity to ask the first question. No, sir, very easy questions, sir. So maybe since no one's taking the bait, let me ask the first question. So, sir, this year we have witnessed various developments in the West Philippine Sea, including we have water cannon incidents, we have military-grade laser incidents, the blocking of resupply missions, and as well as the collision incident, which is very serious. It's a very serious step by the other side. So, can we get your assessment on this, and what should we expect from the Philippine Coast Guard in 2024, sir? What can we expect from the Philippine Coast Guard, sir, in 2024? How do we address these incidents po?
We believe that our greatest strength is our moral high ground. So we will continue to work to be the icon of a peaceful and rules-based approach. We will be mature, we will be professional, we won't get too excited. We will just go on as planned.
slides. All right. So, okay, I'll take the second question. Sir.
Wala nang tanong after this, ha? No more.
Various agencies work on and also in your speech, sir, you said you're working with many other agencies in the Philippines. So, how do you, sir, ensure that we achieve interagency cooperation in ensuring the West Philippines?
We work with the National Task Force on the West Philippine Sea, which is already almost complete group of players in the government. And aside from that, in the Coast Guard, we've been working through a concept that we call the Organized National Engagement at Sea concept, where along the spectrum of conflict, or from peacetime to crisis to wartime, we recognize that there are specific responses required for every activity, and we're working along that line to make sure that nobody is left out. And by the way, the Coast Guard is open for partnership with anyone in the country, and we've been doing that. My brother, he's my twin brother, but he's just more handsome. Okay. Well, broadly, the Philippine Coast Guard has been pursuing maritime cooperation with several countries. And it is not limited to just providing us with the capacity and equipment. We are also reaching out to our friends and partners to establish some footprints for the development of the local maritime shipbuilding industry. We believe that any armed service is just a function of economy. We can only win in our efforts if we are supported by a strong industrial base. So the Coast Guard is very aware of that. So we are really encouraging our partners to pursue commitments or to pursue engagements with us, bearing in mind that it should bring along with them the industry, the maritime industry, that will sustain the grander efforts of our relationship or in our relationship. I hope I was able to answer your question, brother. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. Do we have any more questions from the floor? We're good? Thank you, sir. Let's give him a hand, please. Thank you so much. So now we move to our next speaker. So in defending our maritime security in the West Philippine Sea, as Admiral Gavan said, building and maximizing partnerships have become increasingly critical. And to discuss with us the value of partnerships in the Philippine strategies, please welcome Dr. Chester Cabalza, President and founder of the International Development and Security Cooperation. Sir, please give him a hand, please.
Thank you very much, Alina. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Of course, to Dr. Moya, and of course, Professor Dindo, and of course, to Admiral Gavan. Thank you for having me this afternoon. I prepared the presentation slide, the PowerPoint presentation. I'll try to discuss it in 15 minutes because, of course, what is more important would be the open forum later on. So, of course, we all know that we are very aggressive when it comes to strategic partnership and with our alliance management right now. I think one of the problems there is how do we manage our alliance, given that, of course, we see a lot of attraction coming from like-minded countries. What I'm going to do is to discuss why do we need maximum partnerships, given that, of course, there are many reasons why we have to tackle these issues so that we can find some recommendations later on how to address this issue. Okay, let's proceed to the next slide to show you um, this problem. Among the academics, we know that maritime security is still an issue of non-traditional security. Given that we are now addressing a lot of maritime insecurities, I hope the academe in which I'm part of should discuss maritime security as a traditional security now. I think that is the big shift that we are seeing today and in the future. We have to accept the reality that the features of what is happening in the West Philippine Sea should, of course, be addressed and underscored in our discussions and, of course, in many of our papers and scholarships when it comes to traditional security. Okay, let's move to the next slide. And of course, the AFP is also transitioning from internal security operations to territorial defense. Now, you know this. We've been hearing a lot of grazing strategy. ADRi Stratbase had been holding a lot of fora when it comes to addressing this grazing strategy, and part of that would be the narrative wars. And we know for a fact that China and other our giant neighbor basically is using these grand strategies on how to address their own narratives, given that they have these new 10-dash line and of course the propaganda and some other narratives that they are giving also to their own media. And of course, you see these kinds of narratives which we think are part of the grazing tactics that they are trying to use for us and against us. Okay, let's move to the next slide to show you these some examples of that. We know for a fact that there are overlapping claims when it comes to the West Philippine Sea, but of course, part of which is of course the narrative war of China, given that of course from 11-dash line, then they decreased it to 9-dash line, and now they have expanded it to 10-dash line, meaning to say that it keeps on changing depending on their own interest and of course how they would perceive the reorder of the global order right now. So these are some of the examples where we see that in our exploration, when it comes to our narratives to the West Philippine Sea, we should have collective and unified narrative when it comes to this, given that, of course, the neighbor is changing a lot of its narratives based from their own national interest and, of course, based on how they react to the maximum partnerships that they are seeing right now in the region. Okay, let's move to the next slide to show you, of course. Lately, we've seen the laser grade, military laser grade, and of course the water cannon, the dangerous maneuvers. They've shown it to the Philippine Coast Guard, and part of that is what we call in of course, the military would call it the cognitive domain, which of course there are different types of it, where we see the social, informational, and physical domain that calls for this type of cognitive wars where we are seeing right now in our maritime domains. And I'm quite sure that the grazing strategy, which we have we have shown earlier, would of course reaffirm that this is now the type of warfare that they are using against us, so that they can achieve what they want in terms of the parameters that they're trying to extend based from their grand narratives and grand strategies, basically. Okay, let's move to the next slide to show you what we can gain from this. Of course, part of narrative warfare would be cognition and information. It's about thinking and telling. And in here, there are different kinds of information. One would be disinformation, and then you have misinformation. And I think the worst would be malinformation, where, of course, information are based on reality but disseminated with the intent to inflict harm. In which case, we have seen that also in the West Philippine Sea, based from their dangerous maneuvers and the blockade of the resupply missions and some other stuff which they've been doing as part of gaining that kind of cognition and information that would help them address the kind of narrative that they wanted for us. Okay, let's move to the next slide to show you the kind of strategy that perhaps we should be prepared of what we have seen in Israel-Hamas war was the use of the multi-domain strategy. And that's not only the case where you can see it on land base. It can also be used in naval and maritime base. So it might be possible that now and in the future, these kinds of multi-domain strategies can be used where they can attack via the space, cyberspace, air, land, and maritime or the naval. So it means that we have to prepare all the parameters that would help us safeguard our 5 domains. Remember, there are 5 domains now: land, air, water, space, and the cyber. Okay, so these are some of the examples where we could see that they are trying to maneuver in such a way that they can use multiple domain strategies. Okay, next slide would show you examples where they have started already doing these multiple or multi-domain strategy. We remember during the Pelosi visit in Taiwan, all of a sudden we saw China doing all those drone formations, swarming of drones, and we've seen the swarming of vessels in the maritime West Philippine Sea and even in the Taiwan Strait. So you've seen that what we have imagined in the past could possibly happen today and in the future. And there will be more sophistication of technologies that will be used against us, given that, of course, the other side is investing so much when it comes to sophisticated technologies and, of course, learning from different strategies of based from what is happening in, of course, in Russia and Israel, and, of course, previously in our own Marawi siege 6 years ago. Okay, let's move to the next slide. So part of their propaganda is the economic coercion. And these are some of the examples where projections would see that ultimately, of course, they are gaining traction in terms of their economics. And of course, right now, in their country, we see some dissatisfaction and, of course, economic um, um, low economic performance in terms of how they would address that. But still, many major banks are still projecting that this might be the future economic order in the future. And we'll see that there will be improvements also in the Philippines in terms of our economic achievements. But nonetheless, you will see some changes in the future. So it's a caveat for us that as they may use economic indicators and successes for them to achieve their military objectives in the West Philippine Sea. And I'm quite sure these are some of the indicators where we will see that economics will play a major role in on how they will try to coerce our politics and economics. Okay, let's move to the next slide. So we're talking a lot of words now. I teach at the National Defense College, and this is what we are teaching to the senior military officers. And things are changing when it comes to our concept of security. There are words now like VUCA and TUNAS. These are old words already, where the world is becoming vulnerable, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. The region is now seeing turbulence, uncertainties, novelties, ambiguity. But recently, new words have emerged like, can we move to the next slide to show you what are the new parameters now when we look at security in the world? They call it the BANI or RAPT, where it is brittle, anxious, nonlinear, incomprehensible, and it's rapid, unpredictable, paradoxical, and tangled. So meaning to say that anything can happen. Our neighbors can just use as it is multi-domain strategies and so on, and just to achieve the end goal of what they wanted for them to achieve. Remember, 2049 is still there, and they have bigger prospects for that. And you would see that economics will also play a major role. At the same time, their military strategies are still ongoing as business as usual. Okay, last few slides here, just to show you what are the responses. Why do we have to elevate maximum partnership? There's no shortage of security challenges for high-risk maritime security issues. I think like-minded countries must unite and forge maximum partnership to help shore up the defenses of democracies that work for all of us. I think lawfare, I think that's a contribution of the Philippines to all middle powers in the region. I think our victory in the Hague ruling in 2016 would tell us that the Philippines is the only middle power in Southeast Asia that really tries to elevate rules-based norms because we have used it already, and we believe that this is a good equal footing for big and middle powers to use that. Miscommunication and inaction remain the causes of maritime insecurity. That's the reason why there is a need for us to use all the direct lines and of course, strategic communications. Maximizing partnership in safeguarding the West Philippine Sea reveals on how the creation of a professional Navy and Coast Guard work on development of interoperability and enforcement of laws to secure balance of power and sovereignty. And hearing from Admiral Gavan, I think the role of the Coast Guard and the Navy and the Marines will really play, and of course, let's include also the PNP Maritime Group in that equation. And success in a whole of society approach is powerful in addressing gray zone tactics, and strategic victory is a victory that achieves long-term goal. And I think we are on that path to attaining that objective. And of course, while dangerous maneuvers are forms of tactical victory that achieves short-term goal or objective, we will see more of that in their tactics in terms of how they will confuse us. And they think that this is more effective on their part, but as long as we stick to lawfare, we stick to rules-based norms, military modernization, and we have to of course, increase our economic performance, and I think those are the parameters for us to at least counter these gray zone strategies coming from our bigger and giant neighbor. Okay, last words for me perhaps here. Last slide perhaps. Can we move to the next slide to show you? Okay, I was asked by the media also, is there a need to do a diplomatic protest? Yes, while we are the marching diplomatic protest, this is a standard operating procedure of any sovereign state against foreign aggressor in one's own maritime features. And I believe that the AFP is a very good leader when it comes to military interoperability in the region. They're very good at it. Other neighbors in the region are copying, or if not, trying to learn from our armed forces when it comes to military interoperability. However, of course, our weakness remains on the advancement and enforcement of domestic and maritime and environmental laws. That's the reason why we have to advance the legislation now of the maritime, the archipelagic sea lanes, and also the marine, of course, this one. So I think this would be my last slide. There is no permanent foreign base anymore because they've been asking in terms of this strategic partnership, and of course the alliance we have. Instead, there will be rotational base, which means that bases are owned by the Philippines. And Manila invites allies and strategic partners for RAA, resupply missions and military exercises, and not the other way around. Thirdly, there will be preferential treatment in terms of the alliance or strategic partnership because based from our experience in the past that there might be some human rights violations perhaps, but this would be part of the imposition of the local rules when it comes to human rights, violations of foreign soldiers to Filipinos, and lastly, cognizance of symmetrical relationship since both parties are perceived as friends and co-equal. So we welcome our strategic partnership with Australia. Thank you very much. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cabalza. And now we move to our last speaker, our panelist for this afternoon. So this year, we have heard of the Marcos Jr.'s administration's National Security Policy 2023 to 2028 that aims for, I quote, free, resilient, peaceful, and prosperous maritime and archipelagic nation at peace with itself and its neighbors, enabled and protected by a reliable defense and public safety system, end of quote. To further expound on the Philippines' national security policy, please welcome National Security Council's Assistant Director General, the Honorable Jonathan Malaya. Sir.
Maraming salamat. Thank you to all the organizers, Professor Dino Manhit of Strat-Based ADRi Institute, and everyone. Good morning. Good afternoon to everyone. Okay, I was asked to discuss the enforcement of the national security policy of the Philippines in this forum. Next slide. And I'd like to begin by discussing essentially the national security policy. The new national security policy of the Philippines, 2023 to 2028, is the overarching policy document that spells out the aspirations and defines strategic direction of the country insofar as our national security is concerned. It provides guidance to all national government agencies and local governments in creating their own programs relevant to national security. So when the new National Security Advisor, Eduardo Año, came into office, the first thing that he did was to finalize this document in cooperation with many government agencies so that we will have a new national security policy for the current administration. And the NSP was submitted to the President. Next slide. And the NSP is now an executive order. No? Executive Order number 37, which adopts and approves the national security policy. So as you can see in the NSP, the vision is very clear. A free, resilient, peaceful, and prosperous archipelagic and maritime nation at peace with itself and its neighbors, enabled and protected by reliable defense and public safety systems. So if we look at this vision very, very clearly, and a lot of people have noticed this, for the first time in the history of the Philippines, we have a national security policy that defines the Philippines as an archipelagic and maritime nation. And I think that is a welcome development to our colleagues at the Philippine Coast Guard and to many who have fought for this for a long time. Madami po sa atin ang matagal nang nagsasabi na we should change our mindset from a land-focused country to a archipelagic and maritime nation. And it's very timely that this has now been set in stone. It is very clear that the vision that guides the policy of government insofar as the national security is concerned is that we are an archipelagic and maritime nation. And as an archipelagic and maritime nation, our goal is to be at peace with itself and our neighbors, but we need a credible defense posture to be able to navigate the tensions we are facing now in many parts of the world. Next slide. In developing this national security policy, 2023 to 2028, we at the National Security Council went back and looked back at what are our enduring values as a nation. And we would like to anchor the policy on that. And we discovered that our enduring values as a nation begins with, of course, love of God, patriotism and love of country, our respect for the rule of law, common good, our adherence to democratic principles, and so on and so forth. These enduring values were the basis for the national security policy. Because we were thinking, if we have a national security policy that is not hinged or not founded on your enduring values as a nation, then there is no depth or foundation to your national security policy. So you will find in the NSP our commitment to our enduring values. Next slide. As I said, the national security policy has been enshrined into law. The President adopted it under Executive Order 37, series of 2023. And it states there that all national government agencies and instrumentalities, including government-owned and controlled corporations, and more importantly, local government units, because LGUs also have a strong role to play in pushing for and implementing our national security policy. All NGAs, GOCCs, and LGUs shall adopt the NSP in the formulation and implementation of their security-related strategies and programs. Next slide. Of course, the NSP as a document is not complete if it is not together with its partner, the National Security Strategy. And after having adopted the National Security Policy, the NSC is now working on the National Security Strategy. The NSS, or the National Security Strategy, is designed as a roadmap to implement the NSP 2023-2028. And the NSS follows the NSP's overarching principle and will outline the ways and means to attain the national security vision. Next slide. As you can see, the NSA and the National Security Council has been conducting various fora and meetings with different government agencies and stakeholders. The purpose is to craft the NSS to address our national security concerns. The consultations on the national security strategy also bolsters the cooperation among government agencies. Alam niyo po, mabigat itong ginagawa nating national security strategy, and it's important for the National Security Council na magkaroon ng buy-in yung iba't ibang mga ahensya ng gobyerno. So we take the time to consult, to meet with them, so that we can develop a national security strategy that will stand the test of time and will actually be implemented. You know, the challenge to us in government, especially the bureaucrats in this room, is that government issues policies every now and then. And many of them are simply tucked in the drawer and forgotten. No, we would not like that same fate to befall the NSB. That is why, after creating the national security policy, the National Security Council is not hard at work, working with different government agencies to formulate the national security strategy. Next slide. So how do we develop this national security strategy? We divided all government agencies into different clusters. Cluster 1 is about securing our territory and national sovereignty. And if you look at the agencies involved, these are the agencies that are concerned with our territory: the armed forces, the Army, Navy, the Philippine Military Academy, all of those agencies that have something to do with our national territory are part of Cluster 1. Cluster 2 is about a humane and prosperous and resilient society. And we have a lot of government agencies also working on this strategy. And finally, Cluster 3, a country living in peace, harmony, and solidarity. All of those government agencies are also listed there. So you can just imagine the number of meetings and the number of consultations and the interagency meetings that are being called to be able to create a national security strategy that coordinates, synchronizes, and makes cohesive all government functions insofar as the NSS is concerned. Next slide. I was also asked to talk about once the NSS is fully implemented, what is really the end goal of our national security policy insofar as the current administration is concerned. We all know that we are in a VUCAD future, a future where things are volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, and dynamic, with all of the problems we are facing, externally at least, and to a certain extent internally as well. And if we are asked what is our ultimate goal, our ultimate goal is to be able to utilize and develop to the fullest potential the country's comprehensive power according to its military, economic, scientific, and cultural capabilities. The Philippine government is currently undertaking a reassessment of its maritime governance structure. And in order to establish a forward-looking and strategic approach to dealing with the country's maritime security challenges, the administration of President Bongbong Marcos took the task, the pursuit of a 360 archipelagic governance, which takes into considerations our existing gaps and calibrating these gaps against the backdrop of a VUCAD future that is mainly brought about by our external environment. if we have a 360 archipelagic governance system in the Philippines, then we can be assured of our country's territorial integrity and the defense of our national sovereignty. Next slide. The 360 archipelagic governance structure has two dimensions. One is the hard security component, which covers territorial defense, maritime law enforcement, border security, including immigration, maritime terrorism, and transnational crimes, maritime environment protection, and the like. The other component of the 360 security archipelagic governance is the blue economy. And this is the economic aspect that we need to protect as well. Why are we defending our rights in the West Philippine Sea? Why are we pushing for a credible defense posture? So that the Filipino people can benefit from our exclusive economic zone. So the second portion of the archipelagic security governance is the blue economy, which calls on more attention and prioritization of the maritime commerce in building our national development. We as a country have so long focused on terrestrial or land-based development. It is about time that we focus on a maritime commerce in building our national development. With that, I end my presentation. Thank you once again to Strat-based ADR for your kind attention. Mabuhay ang Republika ng Pilipinas.
Sir, thank you so much. May we request a photo opportunity with Honorable Jonathan Malaya, Mr. Manhit, Admiral Gavan, Dr. Moy, and Dr. Cabalsa, please. Thank you so much to all our panelists. Now we move to our open forum for this afternoon. May we invite in front Dr. Cabalsa and ADG Malaya. So we will exempt Admiral Gavan because he already gave us an opportunity early on. So please raise your hands if you have questions. But for now, I'll be taking the first question. Sirs, I will just repeat what I've just asked Admiral Gavan about the West Philippine Sea. We've heard a lot about collision incidents, water cannon incidents, and blocking of resupply missions. I'd like to ask your opinion, sir. What have we learned this 2023? And how do we move forward in 2024 in the West Philippine Sea, sir?
What have I learned? That working in the National Security Council is a very hard job. It's a general question. There's many learnings. But I think if there's one, that it's about time that we pushed back, no? And I think that's been the constant message of the Philippine government, that we're not out to have problems with other nations. No, we're not out for war. No, what we're doing here is we're simply asserting our rights and we're simply pushing back. No, because for so long we have been at the receiving end of many problems and challenges, but we never pushed back, and we're pushing back. And I think the message is clear that the government is serious about its position, that it's working with its traditional allies and partners, and that by doing so, we are pursuing the national interest.
Dr. Cabalsa, sir?
All right. What did we learn? Actually, all of us learned a lot because in terms of the tactics, it has evolved. Remember before they just used water cannons. And then later on, they tried to experiment military laser grade in February this year. But because it kind of harmed people, they stopped it, and again use the water cannon because their belief is that we're not throwing it against the people but towards the vessel. But of course, um, it's still an action. What we could learn from from them is that action speaks louder than words. I mean, they have to walk the walk and talk the talk, as they say. But at the same time, we have to legislate more maritime and environmental laws for the Philippines, where we can enforce our domestic laws. We're waiting for the past legislation and enactment of the Archipelagic Sea Lanes and Maritime Zones Act. I think that was the missing link in the equation coming from the Philippines, given that, of course, we have already the archipelagic doctrine, as mentioned by ADG Malaya, when it comes to archipelagic governance. So we'll see by 2024 if domestic laws will work in favor of us. And of course, we're waiting for more enforcement coming from our military establishments.
Thank you so much, sirs. So latest development, which is I think is very good, is that Australia and the United States did a maritime cooperative activity in the West Philippine Sea. How do you think these will impact our strategy in the West Philippine Sea? Do we see more of similar activities next year?
I think we can expect that. No, the relationship between Australia and the Philippines has been very strong, has been strong for many years, and that we can expect more joint activities with them. No, primarily for interoperability, and also to show the world that we stand for common principles. No, the principles of a free and open Indo-Pacific and an international rules-based order. So we also look forward to joint patrols with other nations. No? There are many countries that have come forward who are expressed their willingness to work with us. No? We are now working very closely with the Japanese government, for example, for a reciprocal access agreement. And there are many other developments in the international arena that I think will simply strengthen the posture of the Philippines and show the world that we have the support of many other nations.
Okay, this is also a recognition that our region now is the center of the world. We have to accept that reality. And because of that, there are maritime rules and norms that should be accepted and should be initiated coming from members of the Indo-Pacific countries. And I think this is also a renaissance of our alliance and strategic partnerships with like-minded countries. I mean, the only I could remember when I was still younger, the only alliance that I know would be with the United States. Now we have a lot coming from Australia, Japan, Korea, and European countries. I mean, this is something bigger in scale for the Philippines, and we will see more of that in the future.
Thank you, sirs. Does anyone have any questions? We can take 2 questions from the floor. Yes, ma'am. Oh, sorry. Oh, yes, sir, please. So the question is, how often are we expecting these similar activities? With Australia, sir, right? That's your question? Both Australia and the US.
I think that is best answered by the our friends from the Australian Embassy.
I can't comment on specific plans for next year because the details are still being worked out. But as the ASEC was saying, we have been working with the Philippines for decades doing this kind of thing. Multilateral activities, bilateral activities on land, maritime, in the air. And now that we have a strategic partnership, you can expect to see more of that.
Thank you, Dr. Moya, for responding to the question. Is there any more questions from the floor? Yes, please. Just make your voice a little louder so we can hear you here in front.
If you look at the national security policy, we have refocused, no, from traditional security threats to non-traditional security threats. So many other aspects of our way of life, no, is now critical to our national security. Health, for example, no, health would not normally be a threat to national security. But given the pandemic, we now realize that even health, no, or economy or many other aspects of our lives have a security dimension. That is what the NSP seeks to address. And as you perfectly said, we really need to prepare, no, to ensure that the national security policy is implemented and the other aspects of national security that needs attention is given the correct attention, which is why the NSC is now working on the national security strategy. If you look at the different agencies who are there, they're not the traditional security-oriented agencies. They're not technically the security sector. We have the DOH, we have the DTI, we have the NEDA. Precisely, we invited all of those government agencies because they also have a role to play in implementing the national security policy. So again, this is a long effort. This is an effort that transcends this current administration. This will continue beyond this administration, how we prepare ourselves to ensure the security of our country in the non-traditional security threats.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from the floor? So, sir, one of the things that I think we have developed this year is to let the public know about the issues and the developments in the West Philippine Sea. We've developed strategy of civilianizing, publicizing these developments, however serious they are. And I think it has been very effective. In your professional experience, for example, Dr. Cabalsa, in your NDCP experience, and sir with NSC, how do you think this strategy of publicizing the issues in the West Philippine Sea is helping?
I'll go first. According to my senior military officers, students, they wanted to address it. I mean, the issue in the West Philippine Sea, they wanted to have more proactive actions because what we have seen lately, it's more of a reactive actions based from what the bigger country is doing. But this time around, perhaps we are thinking of effective strategic communication on how to address the issue in the West Philippine Sea. Hopefully, we can also translate some of these lost in translation communication with them, because I think by having effective communications, I think that would be also, that would lessen also the tension. Of course, what I'm trying to say is that communication, effective communication works basically. So that's something that we should learn also.
Well, I think our measured transparency initiative has been very effective. The West Philippine Sea and the South China Sea is now a global concern. Whenever the Coast Guard releases footages, it's not limited to domestic audience. The entire world gets to see it. And there has been a lot of interest from foreign media coming to the Philippines from as far, from many countries across the world, reporting on the current situation in the West Philippine Sea. So I think we have brought to fore the issues, and the world has started to notice. They know, now they know what happened, and having seen what happened with their own eyes, they can make the necessary informed decisions here. I also think that China has suffered some reputational damage. No, how much I really do not know, but I think they did suffer some, because we have seen an adjustment also in the way they reply. Before they would not even release a statement. Now they would release statements together with us. No, it's the same content essentially, that they own the South China Sea, but they now release those statements at the same time as we do. So they now know that the information war is being fought all over the world, and we are winning that war, and they're making adjustments so that they can also, get some leverage for themselves and for their domestic audience.
All right, so with that, we end our open forum. Thank you very much to our panelists. We're finishing a bit early today, so you have time to chat with them later on. So now we will be moving to the closing remarks. Right, so to deliver his closing remarks and to formally let you go for this afternoon, may we please have Professor Victor Andres Manhit from the Strat-based ADR Institute.
Good afternoon to everyone. It's been a long day, but fruitful in terms of discussion. We're happy to have these great minds, patriots from the Philippines, and a good friend of the Philippines, of course, the Australian government, Dr. Moya, being represented by Dr. Moya. Now, in 2023, the Philippine Maritime Territory has been a focal point of geopolitical tension in the Indo-Pacific. China has continued to intimidate civilian fishing vessels and to provoke rival territorial claims by conducting gray zone operations in key areas of the West Philippine Sea. The most serious of these incidents recorded this year alone is the collision between Chinese and Philippine vessels in the Ayungin Shoal. Philippine vessels have also endured a series of water cannon incidents, and even early on this year, the pointing of military-grade laser. Furthermore, China's aggressive and coercive actions have also caused extensive damage to our coral reef. This is on top of the increasing presence of foreign vessels in the West Philippine Sea, averaging, based on report, 400 vessels daily. Other states' disinformation tactics have also been at the receiving end. Our country has been on the receiving end of disinformation tactics, especially with the release of the 10-dash line, extending its territorial claim. Every time I see that map, I just smile. How can the tuna be part of China? How can Indian border be part of China? Or how can a place called Bajo de Masinloc, which is part of a municipality called Masinloc, 3 hours by car from where we are, is part of China? This is in violation of international law that therefore disrupts the rules-based order in the Indo-Pacific. Given these harsh realities in Philippine waters, the country remains committed to its resolve in standing firm and defending its rightful territory. With the increase in the number of intensity of security threats in 2023, we have witnessed a change in government strategy in the West Philippine Sea. This year, we are thankful that the Philippines has devised a strategy of raising public awareness at the international level of the issues by publicizing aggressive acts of other states. This transformation in Manila's response has proven effective by allowing the public sharing of once sensitive information. The government has increased Filipino awareness of the situation in the West Philippine Sea. Our annual public opinion surveys indicate that Filipinos are supportive of our arbitral victory. When we last ran it, it was 89% of Filipinos would like the government of Marcos Jr. administration to stand up for our maritime rights and territorial integrity. In addition to the enormous support of Filipinos in the West Philippine Sea issue, the international community is an advocate of promoting peace and stability in the region. In recent months, like-minded states have repeatedly expressed their support for the Philippines' arbitral victory and have vowed to stand with us in defending a rules-based international order. Our united front allows us to remain firm against aggressive and coercive acts, disrupting peace in the region. As we close 2023, the Philippines should be in a better position to confront the risk in the West Philippine Sea by building on its capabilities and ironing out inoperability with like-minded states. In the same manner, it should continue to involve the public and expose the coercive tactics employed by aggressive states. And this is where institutes like ours commit ourselves to that role in 2024. The core of the Philippine strategy is the promotion of national interest in a whole of society approach, the national interests of an archipelagic and maritime nation, which includes the participation of a state, civil society, and the private sector. That is what we have gathered this afternoon. And we are so happy for your participation. In 2024, the international community must expect the emergence of new security challenges. In fact, cybersecurity will be at the center of foreign relations and military strategies in the coming months. This is gaining more traction as more people experience cyber risk in our daily use of the internet. As we confront existing and evolving risks, the national interest must remain paramount in our policy implementation. Next year, the Strat-based group will be celebrating our 20th year. We continue this fight. When nobody wanted to speak, we spoke. And as we collectively speak now, our hope in 2024, our voices will be louder. And we have always been at the forefront of these political, economic, and security issues. As we move on towards another 20 years for our group, we hope to be able to contribute to factual and database analysis of issues surrounding the Philippines and the international community. We hope to continue our advocacy. Another aspect that we look forward to in the next year is the actualization of President Marcos Jr.'s administration's foreign policy. We have seen him traveling, engaging head of states, resulting in millions of investment pledges. Into 2024, we hope to see these pledges come into fruition. And these promises become effective solutions to the issues that occasion them. In the words of our people, presyo, trabaho, kita. And through work with the Philippine partners, through economic partners, through trade and investment partners, we can address that. And I'd like to end by saying, as our institute continuously advocates our interconnected and interdependent futures, hinge on fostering collaborative efforts and sustainable partnership among nations, while ensuring that our shared goals align with the evolving needs of Philippine society. Let us continue to do so in the coming year of 2024, and continue to do so as we continue to assert our rights and protect our maritime integrity. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you, Professor Manhit. And with that, we close our program for this afternoon. We do have some snacks to be served a little bit, so if you please stay a little bit longer, we'd serve you some snacks. Thank you.